On August 12th, a tragic crash on Florida's Turnpike changed from a traffic case into a national debate. 28-year-old Harjinder Singh attempted a wide U-turn in a restricted area. His semi-truck blocked the northbound lane and a family minivan collided with it. The crash took 3 lives, leaving communities heartbroken. Singh was uninjured but soon faced 3 counts of vehicular homicide, along with immigration-related charges. A Florida judge denied him bond, citing the seriousness of the case and flight risk. What followed pushed the tragedy far beyond the courtroom. Questions about Singh's immigration status quickly turned political. Florida officials said he entered the U.S. illegally, while California records showed he had a valid work permit when he received a license. Advocacy groups urged compassion, warning against discrimination and stressing that Singh never set out to harm anyone. They also pledged funds to support the victims' families. Meanwhile, the case escalated into a fight between states and the federal government. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy accused states like California and Washington of failing to enforce federal driver rules, threatening to withhold millions in funding. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis and California's Governor Gavin Newsom clashed publicly over who was responsible. What began as a highway tragedy has now become a national flashpoint over immigration safety and accountability, leaving America searching for answers and a path toward healing. In August, a tragic crash on Florida's Turnpike left 3 people dead after truck driver Harjinder Singh attempted a wide U-turn that blocked the highway. Singh survived but soon faced vehicular homicide and immigration-related charges. What might have remained a state case quickly grew into a national controversy. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis argued that Singh should never have had a commercial license and blamed weak immigration and licensing standards. California Governor Gavin Newsom countered, saying Singh's work permit came from the federal government, not the state, sparking a war of words about who was responsible. At the same time, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy threatened to withhold millions in federal highway funds from states like California, Washington, and New Mexico over concerns about driver licensing and English proficiency rules. Meanwhile, Sikh advocacy groups called for compassion, stressing that Singh fled persecution and never intended harm. They pledged $100,000 to support victims' families. But public opinion was sharply divided, with some demanding leniency and others insisting that accountability and justice must come first. What began as a heartbreaking accident became a political flashpoint, touching immigration, trucking, safety, state versus federal authority, and even community identity. The story of Harjinder Singh shows how one moment on a highway can ripple into a national debate about justice, safety, and compassion. As news of the crash spread across the nation, the story quickly moved beyond the courtroom and into the hearts of millions of people. Online platforms became a major battleground where supporters and critics debated the future of Harjinder Singh and what justice should look like. Within weeks, nearly 2.5 million people had signed a petition urging for leniency. The petition argued that the crash was a tragic accident, not an intentional act, and that Singh deserved compassion rather than harsh punishment. Supporters compared the case to other highway accidents where drivers faced lesser charges, and they stressed that Singh was already carrying heavy emotional pain, knowing his actions had led to the loss of innocent lives. To them, extending compassion was not about ignoring accountability, but about recognizing humanity and the possibility of learning from mistakes. But not everyone agreed. Critics were equally vocal and just as determined. They pointed to the fact that Singh attempted an illegal U-turn in a restricted area, and that his decision directly placed other drivers at risk. For families who lost loved ones in the crash, there was no undoing the devastation, no petition that could ease the grief. Critics argued that the law must be applied firmly and consistently so that such reckless choices do not go unpunished. For them, the issue was not about Singh's background or his immigration status, but about the simple fact that 3 lives were cut short, and justice demanded responsibility. The divide captured a broader struggle in American society, the tension between empathy and accountability. Between those who saw Singh as a young man trapped by circumstance, making a fatal mistake, and those who saw him as a driver whose poor judgment led to irreparable loss. Advocacy groups such as the Sikh Coalition and Sikhs for Justice added another dimension, urging the public to resist narratives that painted Singh as malicious. They highlighted that Singh fled India under religious persecution, and that his presence in the United States represented the pursuit of safety and opportunity. For many in the Sikh community, the intense rhetoric surrounding the case risked fueling discrimination and misunderstanding at a time when minority faith groups already face challenges. Even within the broader immigrant community, the case became a symbol. For some, it was a warning that one mistake could erase years of hard work and subject them to intense scrutiny. For others, it represented the resilience of communities that rally together during crisis. The Sikh organizations announced a $100,000 victims fund to support those left behind, demonstrating solidarity while also hoping to shift public perception. They sought to show that justice and compassion could coexist, that it was possible to hold Singh accountable, while also recognizing the humanity of everyone involved. Meanwhile, political voices continued to amplify the case. In Florida, leaders reinforced their stance that Singh should face the maximum charges, with officials framing the tragedy as evidence of the need for stronger laws and tighter immigration controls. In other states, however, leaders warned against over-politicizing a crash that was at its core a matter of human tragedy. For them, this was not the moment to score political points, but to reflect on how road safety could be improved to prevent similar incidents in the futures. The debate raged on across media platforms. Families of the victims called for respect, compassion, and remembrance. They emphasized that behind every headline were lives that had been lost, dreams that had been cut short, and communities forever changed. Their voices reminded the nation that beyond the politics, the petitions, and the legal battles, the human cost remained the most important part of the story. In this way, the Florida truck crash transformed from a heartbreaking accident into a mirror, reflecting larger questions about justice, immigration, fairness, and the values that guide a nation in times of tragedy. It became clear that no single perspective could capture the full weight of what had happened, and that the conversation would continue to evolve as the legal process unfolded. As the courtroom drama unfolded, another storm brewed on the political stage. The Florida crash quickly moved from a local tragedy to a national debate as federal officials, state governors, and advocacy groups weighed in with strong opinions. The center of the clash was not only the question of accountability for Harjinder Singh, but also the broader issues of immigration enforcement, trucking safety, and federal oversight of commercial drivers. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy issued a sharp warning accusing states such as California, Washington, and New Mexico of failing to properly enforce federal requirements that commercial drivers must be able to read and speak English proficiently. He argued that interstate truckers must understand road signs, communicate with law enforcement, and navigate safely. And he linked those skills directly to public safety. To back up his point, Duffy threatened to withhold millions of dollars in federal highway funding unless those states complied with federal rules within 30 days. The numbers were striking: $33 million for California, $10.5 million for Washington, and $7 million for New Mexico. The announcement immediately fueled tensions between the federal government and state officials, sparking a political feud that quickly made headlines. Leaders in California and New Mexico responded by insisting they already followed federal requirements, while Washington officials asked for time to review the letter before commenting. What made the situation even more heated was that this was not just a debate about safety, it was also a proxy fight over immigration policy. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis seized the moment, sending his lieutenant governor all the way to California to criticize that state's licensing policies. He argued that Singh should never have been allowed behind the wheel in the first place, and pointed to California's licensing system as an example of what he called weak enforcement. Meanwhile, California Governor Gavin Newsom fired back, saying that the federal government itself had granted Singh a work permit renewed earlier that year. His office accused federal leaders of shifting blame to the states instead of addressing their own oversight gaps. The public feud between DeSantis and Newsom, two governors widely seen as having national political ambitions, highlighted how the tragedy was no longer just about a crash or even a single courtroom case. Instead, it had become a stage for competing visions of immigration enforcement safety standards and state versus federal responsibility. The Trump administration's earlier executive order, which had increased penalties for commercial drivers who failed English proficiency tests, loomed large in the background. Federal officials argued Singh himself had failed such an inspection in New Mexico, struggling with English communication, though state officials countered that body camera footage showed him speaking in broken English, following instructions, and even asking questions about a citation for speeding. The disagreement illustrated how facts themselves became contested depending on political perspectives. For federal leaders, Singh represented a failure of state licensing systems and a reason for tighter national enforcement. For California and other states, he symbolized the complexity of an immigration system where responsibilities were shared and sometimes blurred. The clash revealed how one accident could ripple outward into questions about federal authority, state autonomy, and the fairness of policies that affected thousands of immigrant workers nationwide. All the while, advocacy groups warned that heated rhetoric risked creating unintended consequences, particularly for minority communities like Sikhs, who already face discrimination. They urged leaders not to use the tragedy as a political weapon, but instead to focus on constructive solutions that would improve safety, without fueling prejudice. Their message was clear. The nation needed accountability, but it also needed fairness and humanity. By this point, the Florida crash had become more than just a heartbreaking story of lives lost on the highway. It had transformed into a political flashpoint involving federal funding, interstate disputes, and cultural debates about who gets to work, drive, and build a future in America. The spotlight was now shining just as much on leaders in Washington, Sacramento, and Tallahassee as it was on the courtroom in Florida.